Hey guys, welcome to another video for Anatomy and Physiology. In this lecture video, we're taking a look at the parasympathetic nervous system. So the nervous system can be split up into two different types. So you have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Parasympathetic is well known as, or is better known as the your rest and digest. So it's like this is your autonomic nervous system. This is the part of the nervous system that is working while you're not conscious of it. And then you have the sympathetic, which is your fight or flight system, which is, your fight or flight, where you're either running scared or you're standing your ground and fighting. And so this is the part of the nervous system that takes over and produces that adrenaline, that excited feeling that you get when you're either scared or excited. But like I said, we're looking at the parasympathetic system in this video. So this is the part of the system that is at work again when you're not conscious of it. So one of the things that we're going to look at is on the left side we have a picture of the brainstem and then the spinal cord, and on the right we have an image of the body systems, the different body systems that these nerves take charge of. So the spinal cord is essentially broken up into these different sections. You have the green and the blue, which is your cervical and your thoracic, and then the pink is the lumbar, and the yellow at the very bottom is the sacral. Now another aspect of this that's not highlighted is the brainstem. So that will be the cranial. Okay, so that's just above the foramen magnum. So that would be your pons, medulla, midbrain, and thalamus, and such. Okay, so again, these are the different sections where these neurons, these long neurons, will protrude from and then make connections with the body. So for the parasympathetic nervous system, we only have to look at two different parts. We need to look at the very top and the very bottom. So that will be the cranial and the sacral. Okay, so this is the part of the parasympathetic system. This is also called the cranial sacral division, so the autonomic system, or the parasympathetic nervous system. So anytime you see those terms, know that we're talking about parasympathetic, and it's referring to the very top and the very bottom section. Okay, so we're looking at the neurons that connect. So we're looking at the highways, if you will, going back to that analogy that we've used in the past. We're looking at the different highways that make connections from the central nervous system to the peripheral nervous system to activate all these things. And again, remember, you're not aware of the stuff that's happening for the most part anyways. So for the first one, we're going to look at the aspect of the parasympathetic nervous system that pertains to the brainstem, the cranial aspect of it. So you guys were studying the cranial nerves. So as far as this is concerned, this is involving cranial nerve number 3, 7, 9, and 10. Okay, so 3 and 7 are essentially working with your eyes and your eyes, like your iris and how it dilates and constricts, and your salivary glands, your parotoid glands. All right. So one of the effects. So something to keep in mind also is that this is not just a single one highway, if you will. There is an abrupt stop, and just before you get to the organ system, the target cells. Okay, just before you get to the target cells, there are ganglions. Now remember, ganglions are groups of neural cell bodies for processing. Okay, and remember that the same thing that is found in the brainstem are called nuclei. So here we're looking at processing centers outside of the brainstem, which are called ganglions, neural cell bodies. So this long neuron, this is called a presynaptic neuron. Okay, so preganglionic, I mean. Preganglionic meaning that this is the neuron that is preganglion, and at the ganglion it stops, or it doesn't really stop, but it comes to a point where it processes and it jumps on a different neuron called a postganglionic neuron, and that postganglionic neuron is much shorter than the preganglionic neuron. And this is going to be true about all of the different neurons that we're talking about in the parasympathetic nervous system. So this one, for example, will initiate lacrimal glands. Okay, and then we have another one. We can call this one cranial nerve number 7. And then the postganglionic neuron, this one will affect your salivary glands. So this one will will actually help produce saliva. And then, of course, we have the longest and the biggest cranial nerve, number 10. If you remember that one is the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is very comprehensive. It essentially connects with just about every organ system from your neck down, okay? But just as an example, it affects your breathing. It reduces the amount of breathing. It affects your heart as well. So it decreases heart rate, okay? So remember, this is your parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So this is carrying on normal body functions. And when you're just sitting around studying, your heart's not beating at 100 beats per minute or 200 beats per minute. It's beating at maximum about 100 beats per minute. So it decreases your heart rate. It decreases your breathing. Okay? And a part of your normal function for your saliva glands is to produce saliva so that you can eat and digest, right? And it also produces tears in your lacrimal glands. Okay, and of course the vagus nerve extends all the way down to the digestive system. So again, this is the rest and digest. So this will secrete all the digestive juices that will allow your body to digest food normally, right? So even when you're studying, even when you're sleeping, your body is still processing all this stuff. Parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. Just keep that in mind. Okay, remember, long preganglionic neurons and then short postganglionic neuron. Now let's talk a little bit about what the sacral aspect of the spinal cord does. And for this one, it affects your bladder, for example. Okay, so your bladder can store urine properly. Okay, so it'll just allow the urine to be stored. Okay, so in the genitalia, it will prevent urine from excreting out. So the sphincter muscles will contract. So that keeps the urine on the inside. And this is, again, normal stuff. If your body wasn't automatically contracting those muscles or automatically contracting the urinary bladder. Now, in contrast, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in the sympathetic nervous system, if you're in the middle of a very scary situation, you may have seen the images or the pictures or heard stories of somebody maybe peeing their pants when they're really scared. Well, that's because of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system actually does the opposite. So it relaxes your colon. It relaxes your urinary sphincters. So where normally your body would keep the thing, all the waste products in until you're ready to excrete them. If you're in a situation where you're petrified, you might accidentally pee or defecate your pants. So yeah. All right. So again, these are the neurons that we're discussing and how they connect the central nervous system to the actual body organs. So again, just as a reminder, you have a long preganglionic neuron followed by a short postganglionic neuron. And now again, opposite of that, the sympathetic nervous system, you're going to have a short preganglionic and then a long postganglionic neuron. But that's for another video. So let's highlight this. Let's zero in on what exactly is happening. So we're zooming in on this. So the preganglionic neuron. Now the neurotransmitters that we're talking about for every single one of these, in your textbook, I don't know which book you have, but in the new book, it's page 290, figure 939. All of these neurons that are being shown are parasympathetic, and they all have one neurotransmitter that connects and communicates one neuron to the other, and that's acetylcholine, if you remember that neurotransmitter. Okay, and then so the postganglionic neuron in red. So the presynaptic receptors are nicotinic receptors. Okay, so those are the ones that receive the acetylcholine, and then that action potential travels down the postganglionic neuron, and that initiates the acetylcholine on those terminal ends to then go to the muscarinic receptors on the target cell. That could be your lacrimal glands, that could be your iris, dilating or constricting. Well, in this case, it'll be constricting. That's the parasympathetic nervous system keeps the eyes constricted. sympathetic nervous system, when you're scared, what do your eyes do? They dilate, they open up because they're at attention, right? But you're relaxed, you're calm now, so your eyes are constricting. It could be your heart, reducing heart rate, your lungs, reducing your breathing rates, or your digestive system, allowing normal digestion, and so on and so forth, right? And so that's kind of what you're looking at right here. So just real quick, so you have looking at the nicotinic receptors and the muscarinic receptors. Those receptors are named, those are essentially ligand receptors, if you remember that from how an action potential gets initiated. So those are ligand receptors, but they're called nicotinic receptors and muscarinic receptors. So all the receptors on the target cell are called muscarinic. All the receptors on the postganglionic neuron are called nicotinic receptors. And the reason why they're called that, it just has to do with these are actually discovered using toxins of various plants. And the postganglionic receptor, it was a nicotine essentially. That toxin was used to help discover that. And then muscarinic was a toxin found in a mushroom. So that's why they're called muscarinic and nicotinic. Okay, so that's all. That's what I wanted to point out on that. So here you have an action potential traveling down the preganglionic neuron. So these are really long neurons stemming from either the cranial nerves or the sacral region. And once they reach the terminal end of the preganglionic neuron, acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter, will get passed on. Oh, actually, one thing to mention, I call time out here. The preganglionic neuron, all of those neurons are myelinated. So this signal is traveling pretty fast down that neuron, okay? So these are heavily myelinated neurons. So the acetylcholine attaches to the nicotinic receptors, passing on the action potential down to the postganglionic. Now remember, these are really short neurons, and in many cases, they are basically just essentially attached to that target cell, okay? So barely any length at all. So that action potential travels, and then the acetylcholine travels now and attaches itself to the muscarinic receptor on the target cell, causing the heart rate to drop, the tears to flow, to constrict urination, constrict defecation, or to the largest small intestine, allowing it to digest normally. Okay? Because when you're scared, when you're petrified, sympathetic nervous system, your digestion stops, you stop tearing up, you stop producing saliva, so you get dry mouth, or like maybe you're nervous. And again, if you're really, really scared and you're not really thinking about it, then you could pee yourself or defecate on yourself, right? Okay, so that does it for this video. Again, we're looking at the left, the parasympathetic nervous system, involving only two aspects, the cranial and the sacral, and how the central nervous system communicates with your body and all the different organs involved in maintaining normal homeostasis. All right, so just to summarize, the parasympathetic nervous system and the systems that it controls. Remember, this is autonomic, so you're not conscious, and these are all normal functions that we normally do. The first one is digestive. Okay, so it's producing saliva, and also producing all the gastric juices necessary for normal digestion for parasympathetic nervous system. Also urinary activity in constricting the sphincters and the urinary bladder. Okay, so this helps retain the urine inside the body and allows you to excrete it when you want. And then of course also affecting the heart for reducing heart rate so that your heart can function normally. Remember, this is rest and digest. So this is what's happening when you're at rest. And then finally, airway diameter decreases so that you can just breathe normally. So in contrast with the sympathetic nervous system, you do not produce saliva and you do not digest. You stop digesting. You might pee yourself if you're petrified. Your heart rate will increase dramatically if you're running away scared or fighting. And your airways will open up so that you can increase airflow into the body. Okay, so that's for the sympathetic nervous system. But the parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite. You rest and digest. Thank you guys. Good luck in your studying.